Everybody, as you're coming in, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. I'll get started in just a minute while we let people filter in. We're going to have a big crowd today, so looks like people are coming in. Lots of hellos from all over the world. This is great. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Sean Michael Morris, the acting head of pedagogy at GPTZero, and the host for today's webinar on media and AI literacy. This webinar is part of a series that's taking place until mid-June, and which makes up some of the content for GPTZero's Teaching Responsibly with AI certificate program. Today's webinar is going to look at effective techniques for helping students evaluate AI-generated content, strategies strategies to improve media literacy in your classroom. GPTZero is hosting the certificate program and webinar series in order to build awareness and skills amongst teachers about the responsible use of AI at all levels of teaching and learning. In keeping with the mission of preserving what's human in education, the focus here is on your work and in your classroom. Our speaker today is Dr. Stephanie Spiker. With over 30 years in education, Stephanie began her career as a social studies teacher, later serving as charter school director, and now chairs the Utah State Charter School Board. She is an associate professor of teacher education and digital fluency faculty in residence at Weber State University, specializing in digital pedagogy, curriculum design, and authentic learning communities. A passionate advocate for human-centered learning, Stephanie is a facilitator for AI for education, helping educators navigate technologies with intentionality. Her leadership empowers others to reimagine teaching through compassion, collaboration, and the meaningful integration of digital tools. She's presented at international conferences and various colleges and universities worldwide and has collaborated with leading creative technology companies. Her passion for transforming education is evident in her latest article, Unlocking the Human AI Potential, and the AI Quick Study video series Video with the Association for College and University Educators. And besides all of that, Stephanie is a wonderful human being. I've had the pleasure of working with her for over the past 3 years and have never met an educator more committed to inquiry, learning, and sheer curiosity as Stephanie is. Now, as we get started, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and to use that space to connect with each other. If you have questions for Stephanie, please use the Q&A function in Zoom to post them. There are a lot of folks in attendance today. Right now, we've got almost 1,000 people. So the Q&A function is probably the best way for us to keep questions organized and to answer as many as possible. Now, if you have questions about the program or any other questions for me, please email me at Sean, S-E-A-N, at gptzero.me, and I'll make sure I have my email address posted regularly in the chat. And now, without further ado, please welcome Dr. Stephanie Spiker. Stephanie, it's so wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sean. It's an honor to be here. And hello, everyone. Wow, we have a packed crowd today, and I am humbled and excited about the conversation that we're going to have. I'm going to begin by sharing my screen, and we will take it from there. Awesome. Great. And go ahead and I'm going to keep the chat open, but more so just, again, please use it to engage with each other. That is my hope for today. Okay, so to begin, I know that you're looking at my screen here. I'm going to go ahead and put that on my presentation mode. And again, hi, everyone. And welcome to Bot or Not, Embedding Media and AI Literacy in Higher Education Strategies. I'm excited, again, and honored to be here. So as we get started, and Sean, if you can, I know the chat is just really busy, but go ahead and please put in the link for the slide deck so that way folks can have that. as well as everyone will be emailed the link for the slide deck at the end. And you will see that there is a QR code if you would like to access the slides. So while folks are pulling up the slide deck, I just wanted to add a little context to that wonderful introduction that Sean provided for me. Here you'll see in this slide is a picture of me, my first year teaching at Springbrook High School outside of Washington, D.C. I'm born and raised in the DC area, and you can see this was actually in March of 1995. And I wanted to share this because you can see the Apple IIe computer on my desk, which I thought was just amazing. So I could get onto the World Wide Web. And that is what we call it, right? And sometimes I do still say it, but that'll provide context. Now, as Sean was saying, I was a social studies teacher. So inherently, a huge part of the beginning part of my teaching career was historical literacy and really helping students understand historical media literacy to help them really put pieces together to learn about all that was happening in the world. Now, all these years later, at Weber State, as the digital fluency faculty in residence and a professor of teacher education, I'm still focused on literacies and all that they mean. But oh my goodness, in 1995, I never would have imagined just that I would be sitting here today having a conversation with you about AI. It seems like things of dreams. So I hope that this presentation today will provide you a space where you can think about your past, what brings you to this space, all of your life experiences that feed your own ability to teach literacies to your students. Okay, so let's get a little warmed up as we're going to be talking about media literacy and AI literacy with our students. So I'm curious, this has been my latest discovery. And if you can, share in the chat something that you've been surprised recently, in the last little bit that you didn't realize was created by AI. Mine was the post that I've got right here. This was from a colleague of mine. She sent this to me about 2 weeks ago. Some of you might have heard about this. It was a summer reading list that the majority of it, 3/4 of it, was generated by AI. This was shared to me by a communications professor that I work with. And we were just talking about our summer books that we wanted to dive into. And so we were talking about the summer book list. And then half of the books on this list didn't exist. And this was a credible reporter a journalist, and that did end up admitting that they had used AI in this way. So, not only are we're here today because we're talking about our work as educators in higher ed and how we're impacting and teaching our students, but my gosh, this is prevalent across industries, across sectors. And this is why it is even more important that we are here today and having this conversation. I'm just loving seeing these come into the chat. Please share your stories. What are you surprised about? I'm just seeing so many. So continue to share some of them. I'm seeing of voice generated voice from Melania Trump, AI lawyers, AI generated videos. Yes, we're going to talk all about that today. Oh, the law briefs. Yes. The AI music. Yes, I've been playing a lot with Suno. So again, lots for us to consider as we're talking today about the AI and the media literacy and how we are going to be teaching these literacy skills to our students. Great. Continue, please use the chat and chat with each other. Okay, so here's our goals for our session for today. So we're gonna, and again, we have such a short period of time, so this is kind of gonna be like our helicopter view. So we're gonna examine how AI generated content and digital media impact student understanding of truth, bias, and information credibility. When I first started teaching as a social studies teacher, I would talk to my students about, I need you to be critical consumers of information. I mean, and that was in 1994, 95, 96, 97. And I think about just what does that mean in information credibility today? Next, we're going to review 5 practical strategies for embedding media and AI literacy into your course design. And my hope is that these 5 ideas are broad enough that they'll really be able to, you'll be able to tweak them and spin them to really meet your needs in your discipline, your area of expertise. And then lastly, and I can already see this happen, and if for those of you, if you're a teacher, if you're faculty, you know, like this chat right now is fire, and I'm loving that. That's my little, that was my slang. I have a teenage daughter, so if you noted that, that was good. So engage in dialogue around the ethical use of AI in teaching, learning, and assessment. So I would love for you to use this chat, engage with each other. My goodness, this is a sign. I was saying to Sean before we started today that I know for me, I'm hungry. I'm hungry for community so we can discuss these issues and how this is impacting teaching and learning for all of us. Okay, so here's a challenge. And I would also say, I'm sure some of you have been engaging in this work already with your students. Please share your ideas in the chat. We're as strong as our ideas collectively. So some of the activities and the experiences that we're going to be engaging with today, I'm hoping you might want to replicate these with your student. Oh yes, I love it. I'm seeing them already coming in. So for example, I love doing this with my students, and I say, what is real in 2025? What is real? So what do you notice in these in these images? So let's talk about them. They are AI generated images. The first one is of Trump that was generated in 2023 of him being arrested by the police during the trials before the second election. And then the picture on the right, you can see, it's just, for me, it feels like just a sage, wise woman who has so many stories to tell. But there are clues. So what clues? What do you notice? Yes, I see that the hand and the arm, Trump's leg, the limbs aren't even. Yes. And he has that just weird legs. The fascias are washed out. Excellent, everyone. Right. So the color values blurry. Right. So even it's critical that these images are continually becoming just more prevalent in our space and place across media. And so just again, this is just providing a primer for us of how we get our students to notice. How do we get our students to be curious? How do we get our students to ask the questions that matter? Yeah, the image of Trump is creepy. And this came out of a series of pictures that were generated of Trump during this time and were picked up and shared thousands upon hundreds of thousands of people, right? So this is really important. Just again, as we're starting to think about why is this important? Okay, now, as I was preparing for this presentation, I started thinking about, even as a child, my early media literacy education. And for me, it started at the checkout at the grocery store. When I was standing in line looking at these magazines, when I was there with my mom, waiting in line, and I was like, man, the world is a crazy place. But even there is, we have been engaging in media literacy and fake news since almost the inception of the media. In fact, I love teaching my students when I was teaching U.S. history about just some of the early, the 1800s and what was taking place during some of the presidential campaigns and the fake news that really started to percolate, and how the media learned how media could be used in ways that weren't necessarily for the benefit of truth, right? And to really manipulate the truth in ways that could move the needle or to make change that might not may be best for people. Now, fast forward here, this is into the right into the 70s, and when I was a child in the grocery line. And I mean, I think I remember standing in line looking at that national examiner. Yeah, I think Elvis still is alive, right? But so we are still, we have always as humans, and not always, but in the last 100 years or so, right, we have to engage in these conversations. And now, even more so, it's critical. Now, okay, here's another picture of what do you notice? And I'm also mindful and sensitive in regards to the Pope's passing and just in terms of the naming of the new Pope. And I also share, some of the content I'm sharing is it is political. Media literacy is political. That is a huge part. And I know this might be controversial, but education is political as well. It's very hard to separate those two. And so, again, what do you notice in this picture? This was, again, shared. This was an AI generated image of the Pope when he was in Lisbon, Portugal. And he was there and he was speaking, but the image and the story that was generated, that the Pope had drawn the largest crowd in history. And again, as we can see, the blurred images. If you can notice here, he has, it's a little faded out because it's on my big screen here, but 3 fingers. Yes, the lighting, the color looks off. Yeah, no safety in the crowd. Well said. And again, these are when we get our students to be curious and notice. It then prompts us to have the conversation. And in my opinion, as we're talking about media and AI literacy, it is the conversation that matters the most. We are trying to build relationships where our students want to ask us, they want to seek knowledge from us, they want us to help provide that insight. Excellent. Great. I love what I'm seeing happening. So not only do we see these artificially generated images that are really just taking place all over the internet space, but we also have these deep fakes, which cause incredible harm. Now, the 2 that I have here on the screen are pop culture related. But I will say a piece of legislation just passed here, in the U.S. that had partisan support, which I think for me, is from both sides to provide protection for victims of deep fakes. I have a family member that was engaged in a situation that law enforcement had to be engaged. And this was just a simple, again, as our teens are online and there are nefarious actions and actors. And this is where Sean's heard me say this before, and I want to believe the world is Pollyanna and Disney, but it isn't. And this is why it is really important that we think about, again, how are we creating learning experiences and opportunities to teach our students about what is happening and help them build their literacy? So this one definitely of Katy Perry, she was not at the Met Gala. She had AI generate this image of her wearing this dress. This was not this last year's Met Gala, but the year before. Here's Taylor Swift. Her voice was AI generated and a video generated about the Le Creuset Dutch ovens. So again, these are serious, more pop culture related, but we know that our students are being impacted by deepfakes, as well as what's happening on the political sphere to help us make sense of, and in the global sphere of global events, of how we can make sense of what is real and what is not. I also want to share this example. Voice AI generation. We know that this is happening again in the last few years. This technology has really catapulted. And this is an awful example of how a principal, this was out of Pikesville High School in Baltimore, his voice was taken and used to create awful content about his students. So again, there is a critical need for us to educate. Last two examples, these are a little dated, but of how we can manipulate actual news headlines and stories in the media, and again, how our students are interacting with this. This was an Obama story, again, from 2016. So again, this has been going on for quite some time. But with AI on the scene the last few years, it has just exponentially impacted our need to do this work. And again, this was from 2019, a fake Washington Post article that came about Trump being coming out of unprecedented. Okay. A couple more examples I just want to highlight, again, that it's not, we have this across pop culture. Sports Illustrated published articles by fake generated writers. We have reporter admits using AI to create fake quotes and stories. Again, we are all aware. I just want to I'm just highlighting the need for us to have these important conversations with our students. So let's remember, media coverage often blurs hype and reality. And I will also say I have incredible colleagues that are engaged. And as I was talking about the comm professor that sent me the Chicago Sun article about the book list, we know that there is incredible media and media work and journalism happening. And our work in education to teach literacy and media literacy needs to happen in concert at the same time. So we really have to help educate our students about these misconceptions and unrealistic expectations of what's happening. Our students are encountering AI-generated content daily. Critical thinking and ethical awareness is responsible for an informed citizenry. And then lastly, AI literacy prepares students for an evolving workforce. I'm going to talk more about that here shortly, and I'm sure all of you are hearing this at my university, and I'm in Ogden, Utah. So politically, it is a very interesting time here. Higher ed is under attack, let me say, in full disclosure. And so we are really, we are focusing on that workforce readiness and their empowerment to move forward. And we can definitely, we can build in that language and that literacy language to help meet those needs. I also want to highlight just one last example before I dive into some research that I want to share with folks. And this is for those of us in higher ed, this is affecting some of us directly. And we've seen this again over the last decade or so, just the huge influx of predatory publishing. But this is an example. This came out in the last year or so. And here you can see in the highlighted area that this was published. Certainly, here's a possible introduction for your topic. So there are publications happening that are going to be predatory, that are going to publish anything that is written by AI. I have often thought about, man, if I had gotten my PhD in this time, how different, well, I don't know what my stress level would have been like different, but I know just even the writing practice and the way I engage in writing tools. Again, we're going to talk about that. So using tools like GPTZero and other tools to help is really important. But again, this is another example of where the literacy really comes into play. Oh, yeah, sorry. I got to thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you for my spelling catch. Gosh, there's always one. You know what? You have to do that as a teacher, right? You have to do that. Okay, so what? So let's talk a little bit more just about, I want to highlight just some research that really feeds the need for us to engage in media and AI literacy during this time. Thanks, Kylie, that is true. So 56%. Now, this came from a UNESCO study. This is, and respondents came from, this is on a global scale. that frequently, 50%, so the majority of people are frequently using social media to gather their current events. And I'm going to ask all of you to even, I know for me, I definitely, I will say I listen to a variety of news sources. I love still listening to the radio, and I do consume media on Facebook, TikTok, and on Instagram. And I do have to be informed and think about the media and the news I'm gaining in those places. 2/3 of digital content creators do not systematically fact check. So again, a reason for us to build that in. 85% of citizens are worried about the impact of online disinformation. And lastly, 80% of young people use tools and services multiple times a day. Again, I know this is probably not surprising. However, it is really important that we think about just the incredible, just the sheer quantity of how much is being consumed and the need for this. So this lends itself. This came from an impact study report. This is a group that surveys K-12 students, parents, faculty, and undergrads. This is across the U.S. It was about a pool of about 4,000 folks and about 1,000 per category, give or take. So you'll see on this particular slide, now parents aren't represented here, but you will see here that, and again, not surprising, but I'm building a story here of our need, that nobody is surprised that our use of ChatGPT or AI tools is only going to continue to grow in the next 5 years. We can see that. And so the need for AI literacy is really important. I want to share just an interesting finding, though, out of this impact study that I thought was fascinating. They talk about the vacuum, the AI vacuum that exists. And some of you, I'm curious, again, at my university, we have a very loose AI policy that guides our work as faculty. We are, though, doing a lot of AI literacy to help build that into our work. But when there is a lack of policy and direction, this vacuum will exist, and then students will start engaging. We can see they're using the tools anyway. And that what we find is that then they're using the tools not necessarily in the most educated ways. And so that is where it really stresses, and this report stresses the importance for us as faculty and for those of us engaged in higher ed to build these experiences into our work. Okay, so I'm going to pause here, and I would love to throw into the chat for those of you to for you to throw into the chat. The World Economic Forum just released their Future of Jobs report. It came out in January 2025, so a few months ago. So, and I was actually going to make a really just a bad joke. I was going to say no cheating, which we do not want. But so, just off the top of your head, what do you think are the core skills of 2025? So what do you think are the core skills of 2025? Awesome. I love what I'm seeing come into the chat. Lots of critical thinking, cybersecurity, the 4 C's, common sense. Yeah, cheers to that. Prompt writing, creativity, soft skills. I will say too, I also am a professor in women and gender studies. However, our program was just cut this past year. But as we're talking about soft skills, I actually like to call them power skills. Nothing soft about those skills. They're power skills, y'all. Okay, editing, understanding mental health. Yes. Yes, ethical behavior, personal relationships, academic integrity, wellness. Yes, okay, I love what I'm seeing coming in. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so with that, let's take a look and see what were these are the top core skills that came out from the survey. Now, in this survey, these are folks that are top industry leaders, thought leaders, industry experts, folks that are really driving innovation and creativity and are leaders in companies around the world. So these are the slated skills, the core skills for 2025. And as you can see, I pulled out to tease out those top 10 skills: analytical thinking, resilience, flexibility and agility, leadership and social influence, creative thinking. Again, as we're talking about media literacy and AI literacy, right, these are so deeply embedded, especially number one, analytical thinking. I will say number seven, man, that just warmed my heart, right? Because heavens, empathy and active listening is so critical. And then, as you know, we'll talk about these here in just a little bit, but as faculty, how can we design learning experiences where we can embed and seamlessly just weave these skills into our existing curriculum? Because this is really important. Okay, let's keep going. Let's take a look now. This next chart so we looked at the core skills for 2025. This is still from the Future of Jobs report. These are skills on the rise in the next 5 years. So I'm sharing this because for me, this is almost like we're starting to look in the crystal ball. We can kind of, rub it a little bit and get a sense of what is going to be happening. What are we seeing as those of us in higher education? How can we be supporting our students? So you can see the number one skill that employers feel that is going to increase in need. Number one, AI and big data. So we had analytical thinking as a core skill in 2025, but as we think about these skills that are on the rise, and I will say I went to 13 in the snapshot blowout here because I had to include that empathy and active listening, because for me that is a huge part of just being a literate human being. So I wanted to put that on there. But again, you can see thinking about these skills on the rise. And then this last graphic here that I want to share with all of you is, again, as we're thinking about this crystal ball, is these barriers to organizational transformation. So as these leaders were surveyed, and as they're thinking about, okay, well, my organization is transforming, it needs to grow. As I think about the workplace, what are these barriers? And notice the number one is skills gaps. Skills gaps. So if we think to the previous two slides I just showed you about the core skills that are needed in 2025, and those skills that are going to be on the rise in the next 5 years, and we hear from our experts, our folks in the workplace that are saying, yep, we're concerned students aren't going to have these skills. This is insight for us of how we can build these kinds of skills into our work with our students. And again, a huge part of this is literacy, is the media literacy, is the world literacy. And then we've got that AI literacy that really is confounding everything that our students are engaging with in the world. One of the things we're talking a lot about at my university, and I hear this from colleagues that I'm engaging with, just in my work, is our concern for critical thinking. And now I'm sharing this because, again, this is linked to those skills that I was sharing, and the critical thinking is, I was going to say, is critical, is so important to our students being able to be media literate, to understand the AI landscape. That critical thinking is so important. So my goodness, for me is, I'm trying to be hopeful, and how do I think about, am I building these critical literacy skills so my students can be critical thinkers into the classroom space? So, I found myself, like, again, I started teaching in 1994. And I think definitely my the methods that I learned when I first got into education, yes, some of them still work. A lot don't. And it's because we are currently in this perfect storm. Information overload, 2.5 quintillion. I can't even my brain is like, what? Bytes of data created daily, algorithmic creation. It's constantly changing. Our students and I think about myself, I'm living in a bubble. The fake content that exists in this speed versus verification. The information is moving so much faster than our ability to fact check. But that is why it's critical that we use the tools, for example, like we've got here today in terms of, GPTZero and these other tools that help support our students in this work. So this is our new equation, of where we are when I think about literacy. Traditional media literacy plus AI understanding plus algorithm awareness equals modern critical thinking. And so we're going to talk about this more in some activities that I want to share. And so, again, you can think about this. I had this question in here. I think this is already, you all are talking about this, but as you think about, and I underlined landscape. I heard a story on NPR a couple of weeks ago about the top 10 words that we're using more than ever before since the inception of AI, and landscape is one of them. I think I'd like to think I was using landscape before that. But again, feel free to share in the chat just because you're going to be able to connect with each other. You might have some similar experiences and then be able to continue to brainstorm and move on from there. So just as I'm talking about literacy, and I'm going to share some 5 strategies here in just a second. I know this is a little content heavy on the slide. I'm just going to briefly share. We've already talked a lot about this, but really we want our students to be AI literate, and they're really thinking about those ethical considerations, but also understanding the potential, the possibility, but also the challenges to AI literacy. And then when we're talking about media literacy, it's that really understanding how media and replicates and creates the social and cultural institutional norms that we're a part of. And then in my work, I just wanted to share, and I've got all of these links at on the final slide in terms of the grounding theories that just guide my work as an educator. Critical media literacy, AI literacy research, critical pedagogy, that's a huge, big part of my work. And then visible thinking routines. That is a huge piece of what I do, especially now, because I want to see how my students are thinking, especially in the age of AI. So in the ACT strategies that I'm going to share with you now, hopefully you'll see those theories are embedded in these activities or in these strategies. As well as just really thinking about media and AI literacy. With these strategies, these are just a big picture, and I would love for you to think about how you might be able to, again, tweak or spin these for your discipline, your space and place. So the first one is information ecosystem mapping, and really this is to get students thinking about the way that they consume information and where it is coming from. You'll also see for each of the strategies that I'm going to share, I have a GPTZero implementation technique or integration technique, because I think again, as I talked about our students, I talked about in concert earlier, but our students are learning how to use these AI tools. And it's just as important as they're thinking about and learning how to use other tools to help support their work and then check, right? And become literate about the output that they're receiving. And so I'm mentioning GPTZero. There are other tools. So again, just thinking broadly about how you're engaging your students in this work. So really, it gets students to think about and their consumption over a week, and then analyze that. And most importantly, get them to think about how much of my daily information consumption might be AI generated. I think about that all the time as I'm continuing to watch videos. Even the other day, my husband showed me a video, and it was like that static voice. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, Tim, that's an AI video. And so it was a great moment for us in our relationship. Second strategy, Reverse engineering content creation. Again, you might just really thinking bigly, just made that up, broadly about how you might be able to apply these into your spaces. And also, I will say, I'm a huge fan of scaffolding. So you might engage in one of these strategies early in the semester with content that isn't as challenging as content that you might utilize later on in the semester. So for this experience, students create content using different methods to understand how they construct how content is constructed. So this again, handwritten analysis versus AI research, from essays to presentations. Really giving them an opportunity to analyze two different, let's say, essays or papers, and how they were constructed, and engaging them in that experience, and then primarily asking them what patterns. Again, we're building opportunities to have conversations with our students. What patterns does ChatGPT-Zero identify in AI-assisted writing versus purely my human writing? Strategy number 3, the verification library. And this is dedicated class sessions for just fact checking, practicing verification skills. And you might find you're going to be able to do this across different disciplines, from checking scientific data and output to current event reporting to historical analysis. Really getting them to engage in that verification. I love the triangulation of looking at data from multiple points. And then again, as faculty, we have the opportunity to guide the conversation and talk to our students about where they're verifying their information from, and really teaching them that literacy. Oh, I love that. Lateral reading works fantastic. I love that. Strategy 4, as we think about the algorithmic bias investigation. So getting students, again, this plays into looking at their patterns, but we know the bias is so inherently present in what is generated. There is active conversation to try and mitigate that, but we feed the system, right? And so those biases are going to be present. So if we can create experiences where our students can really analyze the biases that exist and that are present in these spaces, and then hopefully they could be part of the change in their future. So again, here's some integration strategies. Are certain types of biased content more or less detectable by different tools? Are different AI generation tools more prone to the bias, or not representing the events accurately? Are there systematic gaps? And so this is really a critical, important activity that, again, across our disciplines that we can engage in. And then lastly, visual literacy. Now this, I don't specifically have connection to a text analysis support tool, but the image generation, as we talked about and we saw in the beginning of the presentation, is just as critical. And I think that, as we engage in this work, even as the image that I had on the predatory publishing slide, I created that with ideogram. And then I have one here next that I'm going to share with you. And now, again, this is going to be more of I'm going to say, as I think about a scaffolded example, but just how quickly I was able to generate an image using a tool, and then again, how you would get more complex. But I wanted to show you just an example. I actually think this is, there's much I love about this image, but I went into Canva's AI image generation tool and asked it to create an image for me of a young girl climbing El Cap, who was on the cliffside. And as you can see, I mean, again, what do we notice about her foot? But I was able to, this was generated in seconds. And then I went in and asked to create a headline. Now, again, there's so much wrong with this image, but we can engage in the conversation with our students. And again, I did this in a matter of minutes. So, and this is just from a novice, a novice perspective, and tools that are in our schools all over. So the need for this literacy is really important. Yeah, so just again, lots of noticing and can be done so quickly, and then for individuals that have more of those skills. Okay, now as we wrap up, and we're going to have some time for some questions here. And again, I know this is a little bit of a text-heavy slide, but you'll have this slide. I wanted to highlight that those were just some brief practical strategies that you might be able to think about how you might be able to spin or utilize in your content areas. But most important is I want you to think about how you can connect media and AI literacy in your course outcomes that already exist. My 3 favorite words that I use in teacher preparation are be strategic, be deliberate, and be purposeful. Really be thoughtful about how you can integrate these literacy components into what you already do. Yes, these are new literacy skills, and our fields and our disciplines are changing. With that, though, there are numerous ways that we can incorporate these literacies into the work that we're already doing, so we can work smarter, not necessarily harder, even though I know that is really challenging to do. So I'd like you to think about, and again, I'm seeing so much happening in the chat, and I really am so thankful for the expertise and the comments and the ideas that are being shared. So what's one small shift? I know I'm currently teaching 2 summer classes. Some of you might have the time off to really rejuvenate. I hope you do this summer, or you're teaching this summer, where you have an opportunity to be creative or really thinking about the fall. Or for those of you across the world, you might be engaging in a winter semester right now. But what's one small shift that you can make to support students in becoming more literate consumers and creators? Right? Because it's not just the consuming, it's their creating too, of AI generated content. And so I see these small, lots of small changes coming in, presenting more exercises. Yes, I see that. Yeah, AI isn't, we are the creators. And in fact, I will share as we're wrapping up, and I think that's a great segue to this, is I just want to wrap up with these 2 really big points. Please teach students the habit of asking really curiosity, inquiry-based questions, critical thinking questions, and remind them that all media are created, and what is included and excluded influences the messages that are conveyed, right? And then secondly, remember, humans that we hold the power. And everyone, including educators, should actively question the role that they want these technologies to play in our lives and the way that we engage with each other. And that includes schools, colleges, universities, because we really are. We are that place where where the magic happens. I mean, the magic happens everywhere, but we really create and ignite that curiosity, and that we do hold that power. So my hope is that you all have found some nuggets and some pieces of information today, that maybe reminds you of all that you're doing, of help spur some new ideas, and hopefully you'll be able to connect with each other in the chat, because really this is I'm humbled and honored to have had this opportunity to talk with all of you today, and just share my passion and my excitement, and also some of my realistic fears. So with that, we have about 10 minutes left, and Sean, I'd love to open it up to some questions.
Great.
Before I stop sharing, I just wanted to share this. You all can see now, I do have a little AI, like my little Zoom adjustment feature on today. But with that being said, here at the side, you'll be able to connect with me. Please collaborate. I just love learning with all of you and just again with all of these ideas. But I just wanted to share this picture of me was generated with AI from Adobe Firefly. I was in an Adobe conference in the fall, and I'd like to think my neck looks so good. And for those of you in my fifth, I'm just going to say in my 50s, it's the neck, y'all. I'm proud to be 50, but so I'm just saying, like, it's fun to see. I think this was me at 20. So with that, thanks. And then here, you'll be able to access all of that information.
That's great, Stephanie. Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. Lots of really great resources, great exercises, activities, things to do in class. I really appreciate all of the work you put into this. This is just fantastic. I know people are finding it very useful. We do have a little bit of time for some questions. So I'm going to see if I can pull out a couple of the questions that came in from the Q&A. I think one of the most one of the ones that I see come up a lot is actually just was something that Timothy Gupton brought up. How do you talk to students about the importance of ethics, integrity, and consequences? You do talk about this in your presentation a little bit, but how do we get to the importance of doing genuine work and not just getting caught? The idea of trying to understand, help students understand like why it's important to do their own work, what that does for them. Do you talk about that at all in class?
I do. And I'm a huge believer in norm setting at the beginning of the semester. And so the use of AI and AI ethics has definitely become a big part of that conversation. It's the very first week of school. And it's not just necessarily like, this is how we define it and this is what it means. But I engage students in an authentic learning experience where they feel the joy of creating something independent. And as I talked about, or independently, and as I talked about, the importance of scaffolding. So I might do something that is a very, and I will say like, and this is very elementary or very simple, the first week, like an all about me, tell me about who you are, write something, right? Create a collage, right? Something that they have creative spirit and energy. Where I definitely don't want them using AI. Now I'm going to fast forward just to another example, and then we will, and I have students create podcasts in my course where they interview a master teacher looking for a solution to a challenging issue in education. We have a conversation though, and I teach them about, okay, here's an opportunity for utilizing AI tools for writing your script, doing some work to help you prepare for the podcast. But the podcast itself is you, it's authentic, it's your voice, it's your creative energy. And I will say, hands down, the students respond to me and say, that was the most powerful part for me, was being able to have my voice be heard. But they also appreciated knowing how to use the AI tools ethically to help write as a partner. And I think even as we're talking today about GPTZero, these are partner tools. These aren't replacement tools. And so I appreciate that question. I know that was big picture, but I guess I try to be deliberate and really thoughtful. And again, because of the work I'm in teacher education, this is a huge part of what we do is we want authenticity in our work. And I'd say anecdotally, I have a college student and I have a high school student in my own home. They want to be creative. And so this is where as faculty, I know this is a whole nother presentation, Sean, but like this is authentic assessment where it really comes into what we bring into the classroom space. So
yeah. Well, and kind of along those lines, another question that came up was, and this is maybe drilling down a little bit deeper into what happens actually in classrooms and in education, is the question of efficiency. Essentially, teachers are often given or strategies that make grading more efficient, that make assessment more efficient, that make teaching more efficient. As a repercussion of that, students are also being fed this idea that it's more efficient. Like, how can you, like, I want to do my work more efficiently. AI obviously enables that. So how do we break out of that mindset of efficiency when students are now picking up on this idea of, oh, if I use AI, it's just faster and I don't have enough time to do my homework anyway, so may as well have AI jump in. How do we get out of that cycle of efficiency?
I will say I have thought about this specifically actually in the last couple of weeks because I'm caught in a grading loop right now that I cannot get out of. And I often think that I create my own chaos. And so what I mean by that is I think with the efficiency question is I'm really thinking about what is necessary. I'm really trying to hone in. What do I want my students to learn? What do I want them to be able to do? And how do I want to be able to see that? What is the evidence? And so I'm trying to be mindful that I'm not creating frivolous assignments. Not that anybody on this call does that. I have done that in my past, but right, assignments that actually matter. And then also this goes back to the first question is that there are assignments where you can increase your efficiency, right? And use the tool in a way then that opens up the time. And again, I know this is up for debate for me to be more creative in another way and place. I do think though, and this is just my pushback, and this is like a huge, like just probably a philosophical conversation is that this is the trap of American culture. We do not need to be so fast. It's like, even at my university, it's like, you can get your degree now in 18 months. Like, learning is cherished. It takes time to digest. Yes, I know that we don't have the time because, as I shared earlier, like the amount of the pace that the information is coming to us. But I would ask for all of us to think about how do we balance the efficiency with authenticity? How do we balance efficiency with critical thinking and the need to really go deep into what we're doing? It's going to push us to really think about the way we design learning experiences. You know, I could keep going on this for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's more good questions. We've got maybe 2 minutes left. I'm trying to decide when do you have great questions. I'm just telling you.
Oh my gosh, they're so good.
To this came up with another person too. To what extent do you engage students with the environmental costs of the increasing usage of
Oh,
AI? And do you allow students to opt out of the use of AI if they have an ethical problem?
okay. This is a great question to potentially end with because the question, yes, yes, and yes. And in fact, last month, I had my first experience of a student opting out of an AI learning experience that I had in class. I was teaching a gender power and global politics class, and we were looking at images from the media of women over the century and how they engaged in work. And then I wanted them, they were getting into ideogram to create an image of what they imagined women in the future in the workplace to look like. And I had a student, she raised her hand and said, I do not want to participate this. I do not believe in supporting AI companies because of the environmental impact, the bias, inherent bias. And I mean, she opted out. And so in that moment, and it was a first, you know, I mean, we talk about that happening. I said, okay, well, how about let's tweak this. How about are you comfortable getting on and doing a Google search? She was comfortable with that. So I would say that that is again a whole nother workshop for us or a session to talk about because the impact on our planet and again, so it's not even just it's a knowledge deficit, but it's an environmental deficit.
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful as
I
we
know.
have the last minute.
Me too.
Oh, yeah. So.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to have to close this out. Stephanie, this has been fantastic. As always, it's been wonderful to be part of this presentation, like to watch your presentation, get all this knowledge. It's been fantastic. And I appreciate everyone who's been here in the chat and participating and contributing there as well. Just a couple of quick notes for everybody as we close. When the webinar shuts down or when you leave, a very short survey will pop up in your browser window. Please do take a minute or two to complete that survey because your feedback will mean a lot to us and help us improve our offerings as we go forward. Also, I will be sharing links to the recording of today's webinar and to Stephanie's slides by email on Monday of next week. So if you're registered for this, you will get the recording on Monday. And for those of you who are in our certificate program, please do plan to attend our office hours on Friday in Zoom at 12 p.m. Eastern. So thank you again for everybody attending. Thank you again, Stephanie. I look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.